Hey, I'm Justin Paul from the Way FM Night Show, and this is JJ Weeks from the JJ Weeks Band. And 7 years ago, I didn't want to be in the same room with this guy, much less at the same table. You may have been hearing this verse, Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope." Maybe you've heard that and you're going, what in the world does that have to do with forgiveness? Well, 7 years ago, I was in the JJ Weeks Band, probably the 3 best years of my life. I know the most fun. We really bonded. We were like brothers on the road. But I was also doing full-time radio, doing 120 dates a year. I came to this crossroads where I was like, God, it's either gonna be this or that. And if I'm being honest, I wanted to follow my heart, and my heart was telling me that I was gonna play drums with JJ Weeks for the rest of my life. That's what I had fun doing. That's what I loved doing. I loved seeing lives touched through music. But God had a different plan, and I was still torn between these two things. So I went to JJ and we had a conversation, and we did not agree on what the future would look like for that. And ultimately that conversation led to not only me leaving the band, but pretty much everyone else leaving the band too. Even after that moment happened, I still thought, oh, well, we're gonna reconcile. I mean, we were like brothers. But this bitterness started to build, this hatred started to build, and we didn't speak to each other for a long time. Yeah. There was a lot of back and forth, behind the scenes stuff that just got really nasty.
Everything just fell apart in my life, and kind of the capstone was the band falling apart. We'd found out my little girl had some kidney problems, and shortly thereafter I owed somebody some money, and it was like $20,000, and I had no idea where it was going to come from, and like had called what I did to do a record a step of faith, you know, and was kind of depending on God to pay for it, you know. And at this point, he hadn't have. Within 4 days, my father-in-law had a stroke, and I mean, all that was just within 8-9 days. And then a few days after that was when we sat down, and it just exploded. I learned a lot in those couple of days. I learned a lot about myself, how to trust God even in the dark moments, you know. And I think that's what God takes us through sometimes, is to trust those, and trust that He has a plan even when it looks like it's a scattered mess. I didn't know the inner turmoil that Justin was facing, and being drawn one way or the other. And so I couldn't see the picture being painted that God was making a way for him, and at the same time making a way for me.
About a year and a half after the band kind of blew up, I got a job working for Way FM. And I remember I was sitting at a Way FM event, and I was just grateful for where God had brought me. And suddenly I began to realize that God's plan for my life, it's kind of where Jeremiah 29:11 comes in, was not to be in the JJ Weeks Band, but was to be doing where I am now. And the more I began to reflect on where God had brought me, the more I began to realize that my unforgiveness, my bitterness, my hatred even at times towards JJ was completely irrelevant. And had I stayed with the JJ Weeks Band, I would not be where I was today, or where I was that day, or even where I'm at now. I said, that's not JJ's fault. Yeah, we said some things that we probably shouldn't have said to one another.
Absolutely.
The bitterness, the anger, that was all on me.
One day, Justin called me and said, man, I'd love to sit down at lunch with you. And that was huge.
I truly believe that God needed me to leave the JJ Weeks Band for not only plans in my life, what He had for them to be fulfilled, but also what He had planned for JJ.
A lot was learned in the way I treat my band members. I felt like I didn't treat these guys in those days as grateful. I treated it as I expected them to do everything, instead of out of a heart of gratefulness, and just being grateful that they would give their time and that they would give their lives.
I don't believe that the bitterness and the anger and the frustration came from God at all.
Yeah, totally.
I think that's on me. That's on JJ. Just that's how we responded to the change that God had in our life. When you become grateful for the journey and grateful for the path, it's hard to hold grudges for people who are a part of that. And that's the beautiful thing about forgiveness, is that the grudges of the past, the grudges with old friends, the chance to rebuild that, forgiveness provides. Looking on the other side of that and seeing how God has worked in both of our lives. Not only are we thankful for the journey, but we're thankful for this thing called forgiveness too.
Yeah.